Working class Americans can no longer afford to take care of their families. Now, this is according to a new report published by a conservative think tank. Now, that's interesting considering the source. Now, it is the Manhattan Institute, and again, it is described as a conservative think tank. And what they did is that they did a cost of thriving index, right? And what they found was pretty disastrous. They found that the median male US worker now has to earn over a year's salary in order to afford the annual expenses of a family of four. So understand, put it plainly, right? In order to afford stuff for a year, you have to work more than a year just to get by. Wait, that's not right. No, you heard it. You heard it correctly. I read it correctly. The report, their lead author, Orrin Cass, explains that in 1985, the typical male worker needed about 30 weeks of pay to afford the $13,227 required for a family of four's major living costs: housing, healthcare, transportation, and education. Oh, God, if it only still costs $13,000, which it does not. As the report goes into, in 2018, those expenditures have risen to $54,441, and the typical male has to work 53 weeks in order to get there. There is a nice little handy chart that goes along with this, and I want to show you that. So here we have the median wage for a full-time, 40 hours a week male worker. So you can see they're doing pretty good in 1985, 1990, 1995. And then you see, of course, the cost of college continue to go up. The cost of healthcare, health insurance continuing to go up, and housing. Although when you look at the health insurance portion, that is really troubling. So you can see that huge increase in that health insurance. And of course, it's one of our major problems that we have in the United States right now. So again, those colored portions represent the four key living costs of middle class life for a family of four. And they add up, of course, the cost of thriving. So again, the male worker doing not so good. So the index looked at the data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, right? Estimates for the median usual weekly earnings of men over 25 who are employed full-time wage and salary workers. So understand, we're not just talking about part-time workers here, right? This are men working 40 hours a week. They're busting their asses, right? They're doing what they can to take care of their family, and it's just not working out. Now, a lot of you might be asking, why is the focus on the men? Where are the women in this? Well, women are involved in this study, and for them, it's actually far worse. So let me get to how they fare. Now, Cass's findings for a female breadwinner found that in 1985, women needed to work 45 weeks to afford the four annual expenses. Now, again, that is compared to the male back in 1985 only had to work 30 weeks in order to, out of the year, in order to afford the basic necessities, right? Women had to do 45 weeks. So that represents, of course, the fact that they don't get paid as much as their male counterparts, even for some of the same jobs. And that's the wage gap that we're talking about, right? But even so, they were still able to do it. However, in 2018, it would now take a woman 66 weeks in 2018 to afford to take care of her family. And let me show you that graph here, just in case a visual aid helps. So that's the male, and here's the female. 1995, actually in the mid-90s, early 90s, it started going underwater already. Again, you have got those same increases in both the cost of college, the cost of housing. Transportation seems relatively stable. growing only a little bit, but you have that giant increase in health insurance. Wow. Wow. No one, again, both sexes, women doing far worse than their male counterparts, are below the cost of thriving as measured by this conservative think tank, right? So that means that a single earner household is now impossible. Just impossible. Now, that of course has other consequences, right? Like the need, for example, of affordable childcare for both parents can work. However, I do believe that that parents should have the choice of being able to either have one of them, whether it be the male or mother or the father, staying home to be with the kids, or have both of them, if they want to work, be able to do so and still have affordable childcare. And so I think there needs to be, in order to make that happen, affordable childcare, but also higher wages. And even something like a UBI would help out greatly, if done in the right way, of course, where it doesn't eliminate other forms of government assistance. Okay. And so all these things would help. Basically, the whole point here is maybe we shouldn't punish Americans for having families. And also boost wages, benefits, guarantee healthcare, etc. And right now, that's not happening, and people are falling behind, especially the younger generations. The study noted that those between 25 and 34 have only seen a $29 income increase since 1974 when adjusted for inflation. So the incomes of people between 25 and 34, millennials, right? Sort of on the younger end of millennials, they've only seen an increase of $29. That's it. Since 1974. That's insane. Adults aged 35 to 44, however, have made nearly $2,900 more in 2017 than their 1974 counterparts did, while those aged 45 to 54 saw an increase, an increase in their income of nearly $5,400 over that same time period, adjusted for inflation. So understand, the older you are, the better you seem to be doing. Weirdly enough, now again, that's not universal, obviously. While but and more importantly, okay, what I'm trying to get around to is that younger people can't make it. While many in the older generations, and certainly not everyone, have done a little bit better. But you know who's done the best? The top 1%, who have gained so much of the income since 1974. So it's a disaster for so many. But it is worse for younger people, especially women, and even more so if you're a young Black woman or a Hispanic woman. That's just doubly worse. And they didn't even look at race in this study. They just looked at male, female, and age. Okay. So now, look, you got college tuition, by the way. One of the reasons, and I pointed that out, college and health insurance were the big drivers of why people are falling behind. And not only that, but stagnant wages too. But you have, amazing stat here, right? You had the cost of attending a 4-year university has increased 8 times more than wages have since the 1980s. 8 times. Stagnant wages. And actually, we've lost wages since the 1970s. The money is worth less than it was, adjusted for inflation. We have less wealth, right? But more expenses. And look, the average student loan debt for a student who took out loans and graduated in 2018 was about $29,800. Again, that is a really expensive. Now, housing is another part of that. Housing sales, the price of houses has increased by 39% since the 1970s. Healthcare costs, getting to that, per capita, per person, right? The cost of healthcare has increased by $9,000 in the same time frame. Whereas if you're 18 to 34, right, you've gained a $29 increase in your wages, but your healthcare costs have gone up by $9,000. Jesus. That, by the way, this is double. What we pay here in America for healthcare, health insurance, is actually double what citizens pay in Canada for their single-payer universal healthcare system. I mean, that's why we need Medicare for all. But what more evidence do you need for to understand that the system is broken? Even conservative think tanks are looking at this and they're like, man, that is bad. This is pretty terrible. But most of you watching, I'm sure you already know this. I think a lot of you are living it. This segment is actually more for people who are comfortable, right? Who don't understand why young people are so angry and won't accept the status quo. Who are not, looking at a return to normalcy after Donald Trump. This is for people who don't understand why Bernie Sanders always yells, why he's so angry, and why he's winning young people, and why there's so much passion for him. It's because we are literally a lost generation of people who, no matter how hard we work, again, these people are working 40-hour jobs, both salaried and hourly employees, and we still can't survive on one income alone. Not like you used to back in the 1970s and 1980s. We can't do it. This is a generation who has done everything that we were told that would allow us to be more successful than our parents. And yet, we are the first generation to actually end up being worse off than our parents. Hey guys, hopefully you enjoyed that free video. Now I'm going to have to ask you a favor. Between the demonetization and the YouTube algorithm messing around with view counts, etc., we're having a hard time adjusting to the new YouTube reality, which is where you guys come in. See, we have a patreon.com/TYTNation set up to help us rely on you guys, the viewers, instead of big corporate ads. Look, you know the show. You know I'm not in favor of big corporations anyway. So help us transition away from relying on the ad model to pay the bills and sign up to be a patron, patreon.com/TYTNation. That goes a long way to help us keep the lights on. And you guys will know that you're supporting independent progressive media.